Okay, here we are, back in KOS. We are live? Yes, we are live. Yay! So, the next thing I wanted to do was, well, first of all, get some funds, get some science, yada yada. We can assume all of that. Our next task was to work on the ascent and descent telemetry, which is this ascent telemetry task. And I worked out how to do it, and it's actually quite simple. So previously I got working a facility where I could do background tasks. So what I do is I just set a background task that periodically wakes up, gathers information about the state of the vessel, and writes it to the file. So if the ascent, we have to bear in mind that this may get started before we launch. It may get started when we're on orbit or coming down. This gets started when the system boots, wherever it is. So if we're descending, we're done. If we're above the atmosphere, we're done. So we're only really interested in our ascent through the atmosphere. Now, if we're not connected here, if we're not connected to the archive, we won't be able to do anything because I am logging directly to the archive. The alternative is to log to a local file and then copy the local file down. That has the potential to overrun storage locally. So perhaps in the future I will have a variant of ascent log that allows writing local files. We would need some way of rotating logs, uploading logs that are log segments that are complete, deleting them from local, that sort of thing. And we still have the basic problem that at some point we will have logged more data locally than we want to store, so we would start losing data if we couldn't store it locally and couldn't get a connection. But for now, no connection, no logging. So if we get down to here, we know that we are ascending through the atmosphere and we have connections, which is most of the time for our use case. So check current time and our launch time. Use the current time for launch time, but don't commit it. So now if our current time is before launch time or at launch time, which would be true if we don't have a committed launch time, then we'll say, oh, we haven't launched yet. So if the log file exists, delete it. So we're going to clear out, if we're sitting there waiting to launch, we'll just clear out the log file. So we'll start the log fresh for this run. Otherwise, we're already in the air, which means we may have already logged some data, so we'll keep it. Get down to here, we're logging. Yay! So if the log file doesn't exist, I'm going to put a header file. So this is a CSV file I'm building. And I've decided I'm going to log the mission elapsed time, radar altimeter, ground speed, and orbit speed. Because that tells me our first use case, which is I want to know in a normal launch, do I hit certain speeds within certain altitudes so I can do certain contracts. Now, adding a test part onto the vehicle will change its performance, which means that to do a test, I'll have to put the test part on the vehicle, do a launch, and see if it works. At that point, I might as well just put the thing on. If it looks, I can use the log to say, does it look like it'll work? Put the thing on the vehicle, add the code to trigger the launch if I'm within the ranges, and we're done. Code to trigger the launch is a custom action, which we won't be able to do until we spend 800 plus thousands of funds to upgrade the VAB to level 3. So what we will be able to do is put up a message on the display, and I think what I'll do is I'll put a message up on the display and do a K-Universe pause. So it will pause the simulation, pause the game where I can do the test, so I won't skip on past it. And then I return the delay until the next tick. So if we're at 1.3 seconds mission elapsed time, this will say delay for a second. Same thing for descent, different conditions. We just don't do anything within the first 15 seconds after launch. We don't do anything when we are within 50 meters of the ground. If we are ascending or we're above the height, then we can clear out the log file, log the data, and there we are. So that's working. I've already done some testing, so the log files exist. We're going to do a launch here and rewind them. So, oh, Lucy just noticed that my wife has come home, so my co-pilot is going to go get some food, aren't you? You twitching? She's twitching. Let me put her down. So there's our countdown triggering through. Get rid of my code editor so we can watch this happen. Now, this is an entirely entirely hands-off mission. So the only thing I need to do is hit the RCS button to request a return. I don't want to be editing the mission file based on whether I want to do a completely hands-off mission or stop for a while on orbit. So if I'm going to return, I can actually just turn on RCS at any time. I'll turn it on now. Since we don't have any RCS jets, that won't change anything. Nothing in my flight software turns it on or off until we get to this pause. Pause will see that it's on, we'll turn it off, and we'll continue the mission. So if I had multiple pauses, the first one would trigger, but the second one would wait. Oh, I've got some messages up here. I've finished up some contracts. So we finished up a bunch of tourist contracts that got us some funds. We are carrying 2 more tourists up today. Now, MechJeb has a flight recorder that actually displays the same sort of data that I'm storing now, but it has a bunch of other things too. So let's log altitude. You know, it saved the data since the beginning of the flight, so that's kind of cool. And just for fun, that's what my pitch angle did. It's really kind of boring. Surface speed, there we go. So this is the plot that I mean to look at when I decide whether I am going to be able to do a contract or not. And it may very well be that my best bet is to simply take a snapshot of this data rather than try to log it myself. But having my own telemetry logger is going to be a useful thing rather than depending on MechJeb to do it. You can request a CSV. So yeah, if what I'm doing was built into MechJeb, then we are wasting time. But time wasted is time spent fun. So you notice that as we ascended, we got faster and faster and faster until we cut our engines. And now our speed's going to slowly decrease as we trade speed for altitude and a slight amount of drag. And I'm going to see, oh, data exported, there it is. Game data, MechJeb, export, whatever. So I can go look at that file and I'll get back all of this. Okay, so we have reached our circularization altitude, and that's going to take our speed up until we're at circular velocity. I'm curious as to what my orbital velocity is. Well, I could just look down here, but that'd be no fun. Okay, so orbital velocity at my 80-kilometer orbit is about 2,300 meters per second. Interesting that my delta V to get there is about 2,000 meters per second. Huh. So orbital velocity is 2,200. That's a coincidence. First of all, we are starting at the Space Center, which has a non-zero orbital velocity. It's the rotation of Kerbal. Okay, so we can kill out the flight recorder. I'm going to get rid of all of this excess stuff. And apparently I do have to turn on RCS. I think it starts off by turning it off at some point. Unless we already deorbited. We may have already deorbited. Yeah, we did. Okay, so the 2200 is deorbited, so it'll be 2300. So we only fired off like 100 meters per second of delta V there. So now it's just waiting for us to descend and land. And as usual with KSP missions, it takes much, much longer to have your orbit degrade and to get down to the ground than it did to get up there to begin with. If we wanted to land fast, we would have to expend almost as much fuel to decelerate from orbit and do a powered landing. Not sure what that amber light is for. So right now, we don't actually have the ability to transmit our descent data to the Space Center. If I want to get a descent log, I'm going to have to wait on orbit until we recapture our connection to the ground station. And in fact, it would probably work better if I actually had an antenna on here, wouldn't it? So let's speed this up and get landed. Coming in for the landing on a time warp always seems a bit dicey to me. I get nervous that it's not going to pop the parachute. And, so the parachute's all clipped in here. And once we're on chute, I can go ahead with time warp. Okay, there we have it. What did that get us? Well, it satisfied those contracts, which is what we were looking for. Come on, KSP. So we're going to get a trivial amount of science just for recovering the spacecraft. We get a trivial amount of funds because we got the re-entry module back. And the crew, of course, the tourists picked up stuff. We got a reputation of 260 right now. That's doing really well. We can afford to spend some reputation points cycling through some contracts, so I don't worry about that too much now. And we have 38 science. I need 90 science to get the next. Well, I need 45 to get aviation. Once I've got that, I can then roll around the Space Center and do some things. Somewhere I have a script that I wrote many years ago that is a autopilot for that kind of thing, where I can just say, please move forward at 5 meters a second, and it will handle throttling engines up and down to do that. I will see if I can find that. So that works, and at this point I can go out to, well, let's go ahead and check in these initial ascent and descent logs. Interesting that I got descent logs out of this. So from 69,000 feet down to 41,000 feet, I got a descent log, and then we lost our connection. So I'm not going to check these in. I will see if I can do a run for record at some point where we go up, get the full log, and then we descend over the center and get the full log. So we won't bother with these. I need to take the current development work that did all this. I'll need to merge that back into my main branch. Do that offline. So what is left? That's going to do those two. We can't do transfer science and data page display until we can take custom action. Transfer science because it's a custom action to do the science and transfer it. And the data page display is basically putting telemetry on the terminal in specific locations. And that's really only useful if I can automatically start the terminal. So issue 1 and 8 will have to wait. Issue 2 and 3 are about to close. I will do another stream when I've got some more code to write. So ciao for now.